everyone, I'm Victoria. Welcome back for part 3 of my Healing Diets and Eating Disorders series. If you missed the first 2 videos in this series, I'll have them linked below so you can catch up, and I encourage you to watch those so you understand why I'm having this conversation. I also wanted to let you know that I did start a series on my website where I have guest bloggers share their experience with healing diets and eating disorders or disordered eating. So I'm going to link the first post below as well so that you can check out that series and start following along. It's really inspirational and informative, and really brave of all these amazing people to share their stories with me and the world. So today I want to talk about some of the pros and cons of these healing diets, and more broadly lifestyle diets like paleo and veganism specifically. That's kind of just what I'm going to focus on today because those are 2 of the big ones. I want to start off with just a quick disclaimer. I am not a practitioner, a therapist, a nutritionist, or anything of that nature. I simply am someone who is sharing my opinions, my views, and my experiences. So please remember that when you're watching this video, especially videos in this series that I'm doing. The other thing I want to point out is that I am coming from an angle of having to deal with a healing diet for healing from a chronic illness. So a lot of what I talk about is geared towards either healing eating disorders or preventing eating disorders or disordered eating habits when you have to follow a healing diet for chronic illness. I'm not solely talking to those who are just dealing with eating disorders and don't have to deal with other food restrictions on top of that for medical health reasons. I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about my story to kickstart this vlog and have it make more sense about what I'm talking about, and get into some of the pros before we get into the cons. I feel like through this series and some of the other information I've been sharing, it seems like I may just be totally bashing paleo or veganism. I mean, I'm not paleo because that's what I've identified as for so long, and I want to say that that's not true. I think that both paleo and veganism have a lot to offer, and they're really great, especially because they kind of come from a similar place. The idea of both of them is to cut out the junk food, the processed food-like substances that so many people are eating these days, and get back to whole foods and real foods, and eating really nutrient-dense foods, which is fantastic. And when I found paleo 6.5 years ago, it changed my life for a few reasons. So I started eating a paleo diet 6.5 years ago. Someone introduced me to Whole30 because I was dealing with a lot of health symptoms and digestive symptoms. This was before I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. And they said, try this. I think it'll help with a lot of your gut symptoms was the issue for me. And so that's how I found paleo and started paleo. And for me at that point, I was also still dealing with a lot of disordered eating, and I wasn't working on it, and I really was ignoring that aspect. But for me, all food was bad food, for several reasons. One, because it just made me feel sick. It would set off all my symptoms. It would bother my gut. And from an eating disorder side and a weight side, like all food was bad food. And so what paleo did, once I found the Whole30 and researched it and started reading all the books and blogs that were out there about paleo, it put some of these foods that were in the bad food category into a good food, safe food category. And for me, that was life-changing because all food was in the bad food category, and it suddenly took a handful or a chunk of those foods and put them in this okay, I can eat this food category. It's safe. I'll be okay if I eat them. And that got me to start eating again. It got me to learn more about nutrition and nutrient-dense foods. It slowly got me to start eating more, eating meals again. Before that, I was living off of low-calorie protein bars, almond butter. I've always been an addict, and salads, and I really was terrible at eating meals. I would just try and eat a bar to hold me over. And so it really got me eating actual food again and meals again. And that was life-changing for me. It put foods into the safe food category in terms of like, these foods will help me heal my physical symptoms, and they won't cause, all this digestive distress. But it also put these foods into a safe food category. It's okay to eat these and it won't make me fat. essentially. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. And so that was life-changing for me in a lot of ways, in a chronic illness health perspective and in an eating disorder perspective, because suddenly certain foods were okay when all foods had been bad. And so I want to talk a little bit about this because I've noticed that for many people, when they are recovering from an eating disorder, they kind of a lot of people fall into veganism. They go to veganism or into paleo, and that can be both good and bad. I think that people get drawn into those because they're still restrictive, and so they can label it under, oh, I'm being healthy, this is for my health, but in all reality, it's still cutting out food groups, and so for them in their mind, it's still restrictive. Whether they're consciously aware of that or unconsciously aware of that, it's still a restriction, and it's a way to cut out certain foods because it's in the name of health. And I think a lot of what I'm about to say, I think a lot of people might disagree with me, especially therapists or eating disorder specialists would disagree with me. But I think that going paleo or vegan as a step in eating disorder recovery can actually be good and life-changing, as it was for me, because it can get people eating again. And I think that's the big thing. You know, it got me from not eating much to actually eating foods again. And I think that happens with veganism. You get these people who aren't eating, and then they'll just they start getting the calories in when they go vegan because they think that that's healthy, and it's not healthy. We're gonna get into that more in a minute, but you know, there's still restriction there, so that's still a problem, but it can get people eating again to go paleo or go vegan or follow these lifestyle diets. And then once you get somebody onto that, I think there's still a lot of mental healing that needs to take place, because there's still this mindset of restriction, and there's still restriction within those lifestyle diets. And when you're recovering from an eating disorder, you can't, I mean, the big thing is that no food is a bad food. All foods are good foods. And so you can't have foods in categories of good and bad, which is just part of the ED recovery process. But when you go paleo or vegan, there's still foods in a good food and a bad food category. So there's still healing that needs to take place there to be like, I want to eat paleo because it makes me feel good, but if I eat something that is a gluten-free treat, or, you know, if I'm vegan and I eat some cheese, the world isn't going to end. I'm not going to die. You know, the universe isn't going to collapse because of that. We can still follow a general, especially if you're dealing with chronic illness and you go into one of these diets, there still needs to be this aspect of like, I'm following this for my health because it makes me feel the best. But it's okay if I go outside those lines that these lifestyle diets draw, if I go off of the list. The world isn't going to end, and I'm not going to die because of it. And to be okay with that, because it helps keep people from falling into too much of a disordered eating habit, or developing an eating disorder, or flaring up an old eating disorder. So if you go into a healing diet for chronic illness, you still need to have that mentality of, yeah, I'm eating this for my health, but you know, if I have this other thing that's not on the list, you know, on my birthday or on occasion, it's still going to be okay, because that helps keep that super restrictive black or white negative attitude out that can be so detrimental. I think some of the big pros of these diets, of these lifestyle diets like paleo and veganism, or even AIP, you know, even some of the stricter ones in certain situations, are that they can get people eating again, and they can get people less afraid of food if they're afraid of all food. So that's a big pro. Especially if you're coming from a place where all foods are bad foods. But one of the big cons is that our society is so wrapped up in diet culture. Our whole society is just immersed in diet culture. And so you get these lifestyle diets that start on a platform of health and a reasoning of health, and then they get sucked into the weight loss aspect of it, and they advertise on weight loss, and they advertise about thinness and weight. You know, it's always, you should go paleo because that's the easiest way to lose weight, or go vegan because you'll lose weight. You know, it's always gets turned around into that. So you get something that's all about health, like genuinely about health, and it gets flipped and turned and sucked into the diet culture and becomes about advertising on weight loss. And that's a real problem, because I know that people will go, specifically when recovering from an eating disorder, people will go vegan or paleo because it's still like I said, restricts foods, and it's advertised on this weight loss. Like, you can eat all of these vegan foods, you can eat all of these paleo foods, and you'll never gain weight because they're good for your body and they regulate your body. And that was part of it for me. You know, yes, to one degree, I was told that eating this way would help heal me on a physical symptom level, which was fantastic. But it was about, okay, well, I can eat as much of these foods as I want and I won't gain weight. And that was really great because I could eat and not gain weight, which is the wrong mindset when you're coming from an eating disorder. But it's also a problem for those people who enter a healing diet from a chronic illness perspective, enter a healing diet for healing, and then get wrapped up in this mindset of restriction and this mindset of, oh, well, they're still talking about weight loss all the time. You can get, and when you get bombarded by that constantly from social media and wherever, it does even subconsciously get into your head of restriction and weight loss. And so you have to be really careful about that, I think, when you go and label yourself paleo or vegan. And I oftentimes still label myself paleo because I'm a paleo-based eater, but now that I'm really focused on recovery on an ED perspective, I'm less inclined to label myself that way, and I'm less afraid to eat something that's not on a paleo list. And I think one of the other major problems is that both of these communities, I've had it happen to me, I've seen it happen a lot, is that people shame others when they eat something that isn't, you know, paleo or isn't vegan. There's all this pressure to be perfect on the paleo diet, perfect on the vegan diet, or perfect on whatever diet, I hate using that word, or lifestyle or healing diet that you're on. There's so much pressure to be perfect, and you can get shamed if you go off of that, even if you consciously make the choice, like, I'm gonna indulge in this thing, you know, this gluten-free dessert, even though it has grains which aren't paleo. And people are like, oh, you can't call yourself paleo because you just ate something that has grains. And it's like, we have to stop doing that, because it just instills this restrictiveness in people, whether you've dealt with an eating disorder past or not, which can be very, very dangerous. It's okay to go outside the lines of a paleo or vegan diet to help keep yourself from getting sucked into restrictiveness. If you're going to come at me, that's shaming me for what I eat, and that's a problem because it can trigger eating disorders or disordered eating habits or previous disorder eating issues. The shaming aspect does, because in all reality, if you go look at the actual nutritional science that's out there, it's very convoluted and very complicated, because it's all based on who's paid who, what big food company has paid what scientists, what the scientists' personal nutritional opinions are. And in all reality, whole foods out there, beans, legumes, meat, veggies, are all healthy. They're all okay. In all reality, if you go and look at the science, it's about all the processed crap that's out there that we really shouldn't be eating that's not actually food. That's a topic for another day. But the point is that whether you're in ED recovery or not, or if you're following a restrictive diet for healing a chronic illness, you still need to have the mindset of all food is okay, not black or white. Because that black or white attitude can trigger eating disorders, or disordered eating habits, or previous disorder eating issues. You still need to go into it with the all foods are okay. And if I want to have a food that is not on this list of whatever diet you're following, healing diet even that you're following, it's going to be okay. The world isn't going to end. I'm not going to die. Like, you still need to understand that aspect. I think it makes following, say, a healing diet more easier as well. Because the other thing is that with any, especially with paleo and like AIP, this idea is that here's this food list. These are the foods that are not gonna harm your body, and all these foods will harm your body or cause inflammation or cause illness or flare in your illness. But here's the thing, everybody's different. We're all bio-individuals. We all have different biochemistry and different genetics, and there may be foods that are on this paleo list or this AIP list or whatever that actually do cause issues for you and your biochemistry, but there's a food that's not on that list, that's on the no list, that you do totally fine with. And that's because we're all different. You know, just because one person made some list that worked for them or worked based on, you know, some science, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You know, not everything can be applied 100% to everybody. And so you have to go into all these types of healing diets with that mindset as well, of like, I know my body better than anybody else does. Just because somebody gave me a list doesn't mean it's going to apply to me 100%. Like, and it's okay to eat something that's not on that list because I know that it works for my body. And so we have to get out of shaming people for not following, you know, whatever that diet outline is perfectly. We have to get out of this mentality of it's all black or white. And that's for multiple reasons, both for healing purposes, because there are foods on certain lists that are supposed to be healing that do not work for my body. And I know that's the case for other people, but also from an eating disorders perspective, because having things be so black and white and so restrictive and so much pressure on that restriction is so detrimental to mental health. My big point is that these lifestyle diets and even very restrictive healing diets can be very helpful for some people because it can get them eating again, like it did me. But at the same time, there still needs to be healing beyond that, mental healing beyond that, to understand that still not all foods are bad foods. And even a processed food, if you eat it on occasion, isn't going to kill you. Like if I ate an Oreo, I'm not going to die because of it. And that's important to remember. Now, I'm not going to go eat Oreos all the time because they don't really have any nutritional content and they can be inflammatory based on the ingredients that are in them. But the point is that, you know, I know what foods work with my body. I'm more in tune with that. But it doesn't mean that everything else that's not on my healing diet food list is a bad food. For some reason, I feel like I'm not articulating this super well, and I really hope I am. So it would mean a lot if you let me know in the comments that this is making sense, and if you agree with me, or if you have any questions and need some clarification, I'd definitely be happy to answer those. But give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying this series, and so that you don't miss future videos in this series. Subscribe, that little red subscribe button, and then you won't miss any future videos. Again, leave your questions and comments and I'll get back to them when I can, and I'll see you all in the next video.